are in. All right, I just got the cue that looks like everybody's here, so we'll start to bring them onto the stage, and we can hand it over here shortly. Peter, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, Nate.
I'm trying to emulate my best Peter Mauric here, where I don't have the green jacket that you did at the Parity event over the summer, but Kevin and I are trying to emulate you. I don't think we're doing a good enough job, but I will hand it over to you, and everybody can kind of do introductions, and then you're in the good hands of Peter, and I'll pop back in about 40 minutes.
Thank you very much, Nate. You're getting there. I know you got some other priorities, some kids running around, so appreciate the kind introduction. As Nate said, I'm Peter Mauric, head of public affairs at Parity Technologies and senior advisor to the Web3 Foundation. I'm excited to host this conversation today about interoperability in Polkadot and beyond. We'll start out with some introductions, as Nate mentioned, going clockwise around the screen. I think everyone's seeing the same group of faces as I am. So Arjun, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hey guys, so I'm Arjun. I work as the lead researcher at Li.Fi. So Li.Fi is a bridge index aggregation protocol, and we have 10 bridges, 20 plus dexes and dex aggregators, and we connect to over 16 plus EVM chains. So we put out a lot of research on bridges and the interop ecosystem, and yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Ben, my colleague and coworker at Parity Technologies. How's it going?
Doing good. Nice to meet you. I'm Ben. I'm Director of Ecosystem Development at Parity. We're doing a lot of ecosystem work. Some people know the Builders program is one of the key initiative that we're running. And lately, we focus a lot more on supporting the Polkadot ecosystem. With all the parachains are coming live, and trying to help out wherever we can.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Chjango, we saw each other recently. I can't remember where. Where was that?
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Don't even remember being there. How's it going?
Too much fun there.
With the perspective from the Cosmos ecosystem, please give a short introduction.
Yeah, happy to be here, Peter. Thank you so much for having me. I am Chjango, and I was previously the head of ecosystem of Cosmos, helping to build the community to where it's at. And yeah, funny you should be the director of ecosystem development, Ben, because fun fact, I created that job title as I was making shit up just in 2018. And then Do Kwon picked it up and he started hiring people off of EcoDev. But anyway, yeah, I host a Cosmos radio station, and now I'm an advisor to a couple of Cosmos app chains, and I run a validator called Interchain FM. Thank you.
Nice, thank you. And our host today, Derek from PureStake / Moonbeam. How's it going? Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, good. Thanks. I think you're the host. I think I'm the one being hosted here. So yeah, I'm Derek Yu. I'm the CEO of PureStake. We're a core contributor to the project Moonbeam, and folks on the PureStake team have done a lot of the organization around this event.
You're muted.
I think we lost
You're
there.
Muted.
My bad. Starting off, we'll go from big meta perspective down to, I think, more specific project specific perspectives on interoperability. But let's start with going around the horn on what our takes are on the state of interoperability in crypto broadly today. Whether obviously, we can talk about that in the Polkadot context, but let's start by trying to get like sort of a meta perspective. Let's start with Derek this time and go work our way back to Arjun.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of new capabilities that come to market in 2022 this year, like around interoperability. So I think it's probably like the most exciting segment of crypto. At least that's what I think right now. We entered the year, I'd probably say Cosmos IBC was one of the few general message passing systems that was available coming into the year. But exiting the year, I mean, what do we have? We've got XCM. We have a whole bunch of people you heard from today, like Axelar, Layer 0, Wormhole, Hyperlane. There's a lot of innovation happening. Li.Fi is obviously trying to aggregate over all of these things. And then there's builders that are, there's a lag time between a new capability existing and then builders taking that new capability and doing, interesting and cool things with it. So I think we're in that period now where there's a lot of new initiatives that are using these technologies that are under development. And that makes me actually pretty excited about like next year, where I think that we're going to see a lot of like applications, particularly I'm excited about general message passing based scenarios versus just token transfer based scenarios, which have dominated interoperability historically. I think that we're going to see a lot of new approaches with these general message passing systems.
Yeah, Chjango, let's building on that, but let's say from the Cosmos perspective, how things have come along over the last couple of years. Obviously, IBC was the first really big milestone post hub launch that happened for the broader Cosmos ecosystem. Maybe tell us a bit about how that went and how IBC has come along for Cosmos and what that means for the broader interop ecosystem.
Yeah, just to build on what Derek has been saying, there's a lot of excitement around IBC. And I don't think, XCM or general message passing protocol is mutually exclusive to IBC. IBC was always meant to be a low level protocol for passing arbitrary messages. So the fact that XCM and general message passing is able to be built on top of it to complement the functionality of the underlying IBC functionality is really bullish for just general interoperability altogether. Because I know what's their name? Picasso, right? Composable Finance is building just this general framework for launching smart contracts that is deployable on multiple ecosystems. I think, this work is telling of what's going to come in the future, which is this goal of abstracting away underlying blockchains altogether, such that it becomes like this whole meta network of networks, where each network is just, like Polkadot or Kusama or, Cosmos app chains and Ethereum. Right now we need bridges as intermediary solutions, but all that could be relegated to the past in a long enough time frame, let's say 10 years from now. So we're definitely moving towards that goal, and everything I'm seeing in development is pushing towards that.
Thank you very much, Ben. From the Polkadot perspective, where do we see again the meta state of interop, but then maybe talking specifically a little bit about the state of XCM and its rollout on Polkadot?
Yeah, of course. Building up on what Derek said, there's a lot of stuff is happening. A lot of development happened this year. We're waiting for XCM v3. It's just around the corner that get updated and improved with a lot of new features coming into the ecosystem to be usable. In general, we're still talking, we have not yet seen a lot of cross consensus messaging, right? It's like combining different consensus systems. It's like what we're waiting for Snowfork and the bridges coming in to build like connections to other consensus systems. I think this will be super exciting going forward and enable a lot of new use cases. And on the other side, what I'm very excited about is like seeing the evolution of toolings around XCM, right? Having toolings that make it easier for developers out there to use these technologies and these functionalities and actually build use cases which are very specific on this. And that's what I'm very excited about it going forward.
Thank you very much. So now getting closer to the end user, Arjun, maybe talk to us a little bit about your perspective, a little higher up the stack when assessing the state of interop and what protocols you might want to use in your product, and what this might mean for the actual sort of end retail users of these products.
I think, yeah. So I guess echoing with everyone's thoughts, we've taken like tremendous strides in the right directions in terms of like connecting different blockchains across the ecosystems. Like 1 year ago, bridges and interop were kind of buzzwords. I think they still are, but at least now we have bridges that actually work, and they're now enabling like asset transfers. But not only that, we have like message passing. So there's cross-chain transfer of like data, NFTs, contract calls. So there's just a lot going on. And I think there are a lot of bridges as well, but we still don't have that scalable, trustless solution. So like IBC is good for the Cosmos ecosystem, XCM is good for the Polkadot ecosystem, but we're still looking for that one thing that kind of connects everything, and that's where some of the new age solutions are coming in.
Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about the Bridge Hub concept, Ben, on Polkadot. This is one of the original theses or sort of selling points of Polkadot way back in 15, 16, when the project was first conceived or being talked about publicly. And layer one to layer one interoperability was a huge talking point, and at that point it was basically just like, how are we going to get Ethereum and Bitcoin to talk? And this was when the solutions like Cosmos and like Polkadot came along, obviously also wanting to provide this framework for building new chains, but connecting all the things was part of that thesis. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the Bridge Hub concept for Polkadot and what that means for maybe achieving what Arjun is looking for.
Yeah, of course. The concept is literally a parachain on Polkadot and a parachain on Kusama, but basically a parachain that is going to connect most probably first, Polkadot and Kusama to talk to each other, and then most probably very quick afterwards, adding Snowfork to have Polkadot talking to Ethereum. And it's actually pretty close, I would say, close in the terms of there's a proposal from Snowfork on the governance voting to get support. So we're really only waiting for a couple of pieces of core technology to get deployed. One is like the BV, like the finalization extension. And the other things are, as said before, is XCM v3, because we need it for the bridge to be can communicate, and XCM v3 is dependent on the 2D weights. So as soon as these components get deployed, the bridges are ready to get deployed as well. And these are literally not sequences of development; they get developed in parallel. So I'm very optimistic on we're going to see these bridges getting deployed as very soon. But basically, it's one hub where we can add multiple chains to connect to multiple different consensus systems. And as Arjun said, these are completely trustless implementations. So there's nothing on an optimistic, it's completely trustless. And what is planned right now is also that the bridge hub it's really just a messaging layer that validates messaging from one side to the other. It doesn't understand the concept of assets, actually. So the assets are actually on both sides handled. So it's only validating the message that comes through. And this means that we are pretty open to any kind of message going through in that implementation or in that text.
You answered my follow-on question, referencing this is all fully trustless, light clients on either side, non-custodial solutions, which is ultimately what we are all aiming for. Chjango, is there a similar, I know so layer 0 is trying to develop something, maybe not exactly like the Bridge Hub, but a connect all the things solution. How is the Cosmos ecosystem looking at the interop outside of Cosmos? So like beyond IBC, bridging in Polkadot or Ethereum or Bitcoin in a trustless way.
Right. So we are not thinking in terms of beyond IBC, but doubling down on IBC. And I just want to update what I said before. I confused XCM with XCMP. I meant to be saying XCMP because XCM
there needs to be some
Polkadot
clarification
specific.
on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's complicated and confusing. We all know it needs to be simplified, but yes, there's a good clarification.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the goal is to abstract it all away, right? So, end users don't need to be confused about all this nomenclature. But, the doubling down of IBC is, we are moving towards this goal of every ecosystem, utilizing IBC in one way or another. Even though we all have our bespoke message passing protocols, like IBC is still built to be this generalized protocol for like cross ecosystem stuff. So like even between, Rollup and ETH layer 1, there, IBC could be used as that protocol. So right now there's movement towards like IBC enablement via, tinkering with light client and making like Tendermint light clients compatible with other ecosystems like clients. So, once that work is done, I mean, it is hard work, but once that work is done, then the utility of bridges diminishes by a lot. Right now, we know that bridges aren't the most secure solutions for cross-chain. So, we don't want that. We're trying to move towards a more secure and trust minimized solution. And, from the Cosmos perspective, we think that is the answer is IBC. And of course, building on top of IBC through like stuff like XCMP or general message passing protocol from Axelar is going to be the way. And yeah, we're seeing that being built out.
Great. Yeah, totally agree. I think this might be a good chance to talk to Derek a little bit about as you are looking to prioritize integrations or figure out, or help guide the Moonbeam ecosystem towards a interop tech stack beyond, again, like, you have a significant need to be highly communicative with the Ethereum mainnet as a parachain, perhaps more than other parachains. How do you assess like which bridging solutions you want to sort of prioritize your work with? And I know you have a fairly close relationship with Axelar, and maybe you can dive a bit into Chjango's last point there on their messaging protocol.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'll offer a little bit of a contrarian take where, I kind of struggle to see like one cross-chain messaging like protocol kind of dominating or kind of winning like the routes like everywhere. And so at least, I mean, and granted, we are kind of in an earlier state now, but what I see is that there's likely to be, at least some like handful, of dominant like protocols. But that will lead to, other interesting challenges where you need to then figure out how to like route across different protocols depending on your destination. Developers on Moonbeam are having this challenge right now. So for example, if you want to build an app that is multi-chain and kind of reaches like all the popular destinations, you can't do it with any one system now, right? So if you need to go to Arbitrum, for example, you need to use layer 0 to like get there now. If you want to go to Solana, you need to use Wormhole. If you want to, if you want to get to Cosmos-based destinations, you have to use Axelar. And so it's a little hard for me to see one solution dominating everything, because especially this light client approach is like pretty like engineering intensive. And so maybe it'll ultimately get there, but I see for the foreseeable future living in this kind of, let's call it like multiple transport type world. And that does add complexity, right? So, I mean, there is complexity. I think that's where, Li.Fi is kind of understanding this and coming in, trying to like offer, let's say like an aggregator abstraction on top of it even. But I do see it as probably likely to be this like multi-transport world for some amount of time. And some of them are different, right? So for example, we even found practical experiences that some of the teams on Moonbeam are getting. A lot of these systems, let's take let's say 1 to 2 minutes to deliver a message. Some of them are much faster. Some of them, deliver a message, maybe make different security trade-off assumptions, but might be able to deliver a message in seconds. And depending on like your use case in your app, you might, slow and safe might be the right way for one message, but fast and maybe it's okay if it's not 100% reliable, that might be okay for other scenarios. And so I think there's a lot of nuance that people are starting to learn now about how these different systems work, and it's likely that you may need more than one. People are, at least developers we've been speaking with on Moonbeam, many of them are saying, geez, it might be a little bit scary to all in with one. I almost want like maybe even almost a primary backup or like, have redundancy in the system even. So these are the kinds of things that I'm seeing these days.
Yeah, it's like, how many chat apps do we have on our phone? I've got like 7 that I have to check every day to communicate with different people in different various communities, right? Like iMessage, family and friends, Signal, the lawyers, Telegram, the community. It's like nonstop, and you just have to be on top of all of them. It's pretty annoying a lot of the time. And I haven't found a messaging chat aggregator that actually works. Arjun, tell us about the challenge of like mixing all these things together and making it into a more usable product for either devs or users at the end of the day.
I think I have to first thank Derek for the perfect Li.Fi pitch. But then, yeah, so I don't think there's one solution that can solve everything. Otherwise, we would not have such a fragmented ecosystem, right? Like with bridges. So we kind of need multiple bridges to, first of all, the of course use case to connect to different ecosystems. But then even when there are multiple bridges connecting to one ecosystem, we see like differentiation in terms of their design, the cost, the time it takes. So there are just way too many factors that are, going on in like a bridge construction. And that's where I feel someone like Li.Fi that aggregates everything and kind of offers all of these solutions out of the box comes into the play. So they have like multiple options, they have backup options. And I think it's always better to have backups, like especially given what we've seen in the past week, we can't rely on a single solution. So yeah.
Yeah. So a mesh of everything for the foreseeable future. Let's talk a little bit, bring it back to the layer one app chain sort of narrative that's been increasingly prevalent in crypto. And then I've had this question for a while and no one's been able to give me a good answer. It's not specific to Cosmos or Polkadot or even you, Arjun, but it seems that the Cosmos and Polkadot ecosystems forever have been very clear that we see a future where many chains where they must all communicate. One solution of this is within this network of chains, Cosmos or Polkadot, and we have very clear ideas, research, and development around cross app chain messaging protocols with IBC and XCM. So one, let's talk about what new applications we think can be built in these new paradigms, right? By utilizing cross-chain, secure, trustless cross-chain messaging across multiple layer ones. And then the question that I have always when seeing the layer two ecosystem on Ethereum is like, these are all silos and there doesn't seem to be any strong direction, research, development for a standardized messaging protocol between Ethereum layer twos. What is Ethereum going to do from a group of experts that have been working on this cross-chain ecosystem these cross-chain ecosystems to date? Ben, I think we heard from you longest to go, so maybe we can start with that with you.
Yeah, I think what we will see, or this whole app chain is like, isn't it all about like becoming more capital efficient, right? We can now use more the security that we have in our systems or in these different systems, and then have this security used in a more efficient way through these separating and communicating with each other. In that sense, that's what I'm saying. And I think we will see this in different layers. We will see this in the lowest layer, where we have the block security, and we can then share block security over different app chains, which are specific to one use case. And then on the app itself, we will see like more chains which are very specialized for one specific use case, and then but they are not siloed out anywhere. They can just communicate with each other. So you have all of them either specialized, or they have basis functionalities, but they have one functionality where they're very, very specific and very, very good, and users can just swap around and use whatever they want to. This could also be in the way of being more capital efficient, in the sense of these liquidity and DeFi pools that we all see. Like right now, if you talk to somebody and they say like they have a multi-chain strategy, this means most of the time they're going to deploy the dApp on just a bunch of different chains which are completely siloed, and that fractionalizes the whole liquidity, the underlying liquidity. I think we've seen these systems that we connect individual chains and they can communicate. This could be something that is much more efficient going forward. That's what I say. For the Ethereum side, like what we've seen is that a lot more of the parachains themselves, the layer 2 implementations, are actually starting to connect to other networks, and it's not necessarily through Ethereum. It's like they are a layer 2 and they start to connect in the interoperability way to different other consensus systems. And that's something very interesting, because I thought it would always go through Ethereum and have like Ethereum as the core consensus system. But it seems like that layers 2 are more in the way of like they want to become their own sort of like network, and then gonna connect to other networks through their own network. I mean, that's what I think we see right now. I don't know how this will work out, but we will see going forward.
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you think it would, again, make sense to use, if you have all these layer 2s that are syncing with the Ethereum mainnet, like you'd think it's getting close to what Polkadot looked like. So it's either they're scared of looking too much like Polkadot, or there's an understanding that the ETH base layer is not ever going to be optimized for that function. Who knows?
Maybe they just don't want to go into dependencies, right? Because
Yeah.
if you go through the core layer, then you have always these dependencies on certain developments. And if you have specific dependencies, you might just directly connect rather being independent on anything.
Yeah. Derek, let's hear from you in terms of one, the new applications or the new design space that you see opening up by leveraging this multi-chain, cross-chain communication, and then two, how you think the Ethereum layer 2 world is going to connect itself, if at all. You're muted.
Thanks. Yeah, the app chains, I'm quite bullish on them. And I mean, you can see that over the last 2 years, there's been a huge amount of adoption of app chains. And so the first question is, well, why? Like, why are people adopting these things? And I boil it down to like 2 reasons, really, where it's really around performance and cost control, like on the one hand, and like the ability to customize and optimize on the other hand. And so I think you see a lot of projects that know they need to achieve some certain scale, that regardless of if you're in a shared environment, even in L2, you're always going to be subject to this like noisy neighbor problem, where all it takes is one NFT mint to kind of screw up your user experience for your app, right? So then that leads a lot of people to say, well, I kind of want like my own dedicated chain. I can optimize it. That's a way that I can control the user experience and get, have some guarantees around the block space that's going to be available to me. And so I see that as not going away. That trend will continue as you have, app teams that are, kind of more serious and like want to, create like scalability for their user experience. I think that, well, I mean, what are the drawbacks? I mean, the drawbacks are it's a pain to launch your own chain, right? Compared to a smart contract on, you're on a smart contract platform, you're outsourcing a lot of the infrastructure. When you have an app chain, you're dealing with that infrastructure yourself. So I think, that's an area where it has to be easier to launch these things, and that'll like drive kind of more adoption. But the second challenge I would say is exactly around what we've been talking about, which is that, you have an app chain, instead of being in the shared EVM environment, like on Moonbeam, you're on your own chain, like, that's, how do you get assets there? You're not where all the users are. So like, how are you going to make your app relevant and interact with other systems? But this is exactly the thing that these cross-chain interoperability techniques solve. And so, I really think that, that's going to drive like a lot more app chain adoption when you have this pervasive connectivity, because it allows, it kind of reduces this friction on, asset movement, interacting with like, other protocols and other chains. That's going to, remove like at least one of the 2 like inhibitors that I see right now. When it comes to L2s, I would say that, this is a realization that some people are coming to now, that, L2 may have more scalability than base like Ethereum mainnet, but it is still a shared platform. I mean, just to use a Cosmos example, since we have someone here from that ecosystem, DYDX is like the big example where they, first were on mainnet, they realized they need more scalability, they moved to Starkware, and then they announced plans. I don't think they've done it yet, but they announced plans that they're going to, relocate from Starkware to a Cosmos app chain. And so I do think that these underlying drivers are going to drive more and more teams, towards app chains. But it's this connectivity that is going to like, really like help make that happen. And, interestingly enough, on Moonbeam, we're even seeing, this scenario where if someone has, a parachain, like, which is an app chain really, just running under a shared security model, it has XCM connectivity, obviously by default, by being a parachain. But when it wants to reach other destinations, you can basically relay like onwards to one of these other messaging systems to reach other destinations. So even in the the integration that we help facilitate for one-click dot deposits on Osmosis, So this is a scenario where users can basically deposit dot, they get a native dot deposit address to LP into an osmosis pool. There's like 3 different messaging systems that are happening. There's an XCM leg from like the relay chain to Moonbeam. There's a XLR leg that goes over to the Cosmos interchain, and then there's an IBC leg that's like moving the dot like onto osmosis. So I think we're probably going to see more of that, where there might even be routes that are spanning like multiple systems to kind of get to where users want to be. The good part about it is that even though it sounds complicated, the benefit is to the user, you can like hide away a lot of this like infrastructural complexity, and they're interacting with something simple, even if there's 6-7 steps happening like behind the scenes. And so I see that as like another big improvement, right, that cross-chain interoperability can bring to kind of simplify the user experience, even if there's a lot of chains kind of servicing that request in the background.
Thank you very much. Building on that, Chjango, Derek mentioned DYDX's decision to build its own app chain, in part because it really does need to be able to touch liquidity from many other places, and a layer 2 potentially was not the right place to be able to do that. Maybe talk a little bit about that example, and then obviously just the broader question. What new applications or design space do you see opening up as a result of this interchain message passing these interchain message passing protocols? And then I guess you're answering the second question first with the DYDX example in regard to ETH layer 2s.
Right. DYDX moving to Cosmos is sort of validation of the app chain thesis, which is that we can achieve horizontal scaling and we could offer the same types of Web2 applications, but by utilizing various app chain networks. So, to answer your original question, I think Ben really hit the nail on the head, which is app chains can specialize, and by specializing, you can achieve a Twitter-like interface without Twitter, the company, owning everything that's up and down the stack, including like what it serves up, the data that it stores, that it sells to users, to its unilateral control over your Twitter handle, and to say that if you violate terms and conditions that, we're going to ban you, right? So with the app chain, you could say, okay, well, one app chain, call it Handshake, is a naming protocol, and therefore you have sovereign names, no one can take it away from you. Okay, now you have that, then maybe it composes with another app chain that does KYC or does user onboarding in some way, and then that composes with an IPFS or some storage layer, and with that composing of different app chains, you can create a stack that mimics the same UX as Twitter.com. So that's the future, and that's sort of the Internet of Blockchains vision that we're seeing, right? So and that is more scalable than if all 3 of those applications were running on a single runtime, like on ETH-POS. So that does add to what Derek was alluding to with the inherent unscalability of layer 3 on top of layer 2 on top of layer 1 settlement layer. So that's what we're seeing. Totally
agree. Arjun, in terms of it's the same question, but again, you might have the solution for some of these layer 2s in the second question about Ethereum. But starting out, are you seeing people, for example, developing apps that are looking to be like cross-chain apps first, or what's the sort of mix of project that you're seeing coming to you for your service? And then maybe the second half, just address the ETH layer 2 question specifically.
So I think like with Li.Fi in the context, we don't get requests for app chains. We get requests for, let's say, building a natively multi-chain application. So these projects, since they're starting now, so they can integrate bridges into their tech stack early. And what that means is they can offer like features that are built and depend their core function depends on bridges, rather than other projects that are using bridges for like onboarding. So it's like it's totally inbuilt in the tech stack, and they can then offer like cross-chain yield aggregation, lending, staking, and this has like much more improved user experience because they don't have to go to any third-party website. Everything is just inbuilt, and as I said, they're like natively multi-chain. And in terms of like app chains and Ethereum, I think both of them are kind of similar. So it's like you have all of these L2s and L3s, and then you have all of these app chains, but you still need to, connect these to each other. Otherwise, we'll have like isolated chains again. And that's where all of these bridging solutions will come in again. But then right now, we don't have a practical example to, learn from. Like we have the DYDX example, but we still don't know how they'll onboard users onto their chain.
Great. We have about 6 minutes left, so we're going to do some current events and what it means for the interop ecosystem. Inescapable news this week with the fall of SAM and FTX. Many of us who follow this ecosystem and have been around, or this industry and have been around for a long time, have been shouting from the rooftops that this group of people is maybe not to be trusted completely, in part because we've seen the deals behind the scenes. SAM, FTX, Alameda would only really do business with chains, ecosystems, projects that were willing to give him double-digit percentage ownership of their token supply, so that he could own it and pump it, right? So you would see what he's been trying to build in terms of Solana, Layer 0 Labs, Wormhole, Aptos, Sui, and like trying to own this whole little ecosystem of his own, and connect them all with bridging systems that he basically owns, 15, 20, 30% of. With FTX and Alameda finally collapsing, what does that mean for the state of interop? Obviously, like these teams are still going to build, but they're going to lose their biggest supporter, financer, and advocate, sort of like overnight. There's obviously like a reputational element to that. But also looking back, we can see a lot of what him and his compatriots have sort of pumped over the last couple of years, basically a lot of hot air. Do you see some of these companies folding? Like what does this mean for the state of interop infrastructure developers? We can start with Arjun first and then work our way back to Derek to wrap things up.
I think, yeah, of course, things will take a hit because you can't just recover from this quickly, right? But then at the end of the day, we have to understand that these ecosystems are, even though they might be bootstrapped with the help of these individuals and companies, they are what they are because of the people and the developers building on them. So I think there are still enough teams building on all of these ecosystems, and they have enough brain power in amongst these devs that they can come out of this strongly.
You muted.
I was going to say, we don't see too much or really any investment from the FTX Alameda multi-coin world in the Polkadot ecosystem. But a number of projects have integrated things like Wormhole or Layer 0 into their tech stacks. Is that going to be an issue for them, do you think, going forward? Or the exposure is minimal?
You mean for the Polkadot ecosystem?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, of course. I mean, so far what we've heard, like there's at least no or minimal first level exposure to what has happened in the Polkadot ecosystem, and this is very positive. I think we will see, or we'll need to go back and see what the second and third order effects are. But this is like generally, what I think is like, is it rather beneficial for the Polkadot ecosystem? I mean, we always have tried to be very conservative and try to be not take shortcuts in that sense what we're building, and maybe that's actually now the realization of a lot of users and builders why we have done so and why this is actually a good path than taking the short quick win instead of like going slow and making sure that we really adhere to our primitives and make this sort of like Web3 future as we have assumed or expected in that way. So I'm not sure if that is definitely not good in generally, but it can also have like a lot of benefits for the builders to step up and say like, yeah, that's the vision, that's why we are here, and that's what we want to do, and that's what I would really hope going forward. to see happening.
Thank you. Chjango, I think similarly, not a ton of exposure to Sam and his broader network in the Cosmos ecosystem. Obviously, Layer Zero is like in there in the mix, but still a strong team and funded. What do you see as the impact on the interoperability ecosystem from this?
I don't see too much of an impact on interoperability overall, but I do see a very net positive impact on DeFi. Just alluding to the DCCPA bill that Sam had been pushing underhandedly, seeing that, I'm actually more optimistic for the space. Even though he had a wide impact on like crypto prices, I think it helps create a dampening effect on the projects that he was pumping, right? Because, as you said, he would get, 20, 30% of a token distribution of like Solana, Aptos or whatever, and then like pump it like hell, listed on FTX. And then, when it reaches its peak, he then just like dumps it all on retail. So that kind of activity is really toxic and it's parasitic, and it only seeks to enrich Sam and FTX itself. And so with that out of the picture, I think overall it's great for the crypto ecosystem. There's like less opportunity for people like that to grift retail out of their hard-earned money, and then it lets the merits of the project speak for themselves.
All under a facade of giving it all back at some point, which basically a lie. Derek, the final word. I think the state of the interop ecosystem is strong and will survive this broader crypto hit. But tell us your thoughts on where we go from here. You're muted.
I would agree with that, and I would say that we're just seeing consolidation of developer activity around higher quality projects, and that does include things like Layer Zero, Wormhole, and others. That just takes. I think that like it takes a lot to build like a high quality like interoperable general message passing like protocol, and there's like a big investment in security. So it's just not that easy to kind of come out of nowhere and build one of these things. And so we're kind of seeing. It's going to be a multipolar kind of landscape, as I was saying before, but it is consolidated around some smaller set of options, including, of course, like IBC and XEM, being two key players like in this area. I think my take more generally on these events, I think about comments that I heard Robert Leshner make, which is that when you have these issues that are it's at surface out of a kind of a lack of transparency from these like centralized players, it should be and is long-term bullish for DeFi, I think, right? Because even if the liquidity leaves DeFi in like times like this, it is fully transparent, and these things are still chugging along. There's a bunch in the Moonbeam ecosystem right now, and so there's no kind of worries about like some sort of like misrepresentation of like what is happening like in a protocol like Moonwell, like in terms of like lending and borrowing. It's just all transparent on chain. So short-term pain, but I think long-term bullish for kind of the decentralized like versions of these things where there's full transparency from being on chain, and that's probably in the spirit of Web3, really.
Totally agree, and we all need to work together to remind everyone that Sam does not represent his approach to things does not represent all of us. And it pains me to say because I am so competitive, but slow and steady does seem to win the race in this situation. Thank you all for joining us today. Great conference. Thank you to the Moonbeam team for organizing. I will turn it over to our host so we can get on to the next panel. Thanks, Nate.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.